Paragraph rules are a great and very necessary feature in InDesign. They mean that if you want to have a piece of text reversing out of a solid box, you can achieve that using a paragraph rule. And the advantage of this is that if the text is edited, you see the rules move along with the type. You don't need to worry about leaving boxes behind. So here's how we can add paragraph rules to our text. I'll start by just applying some formats to the text. Come to my character formats. Let's make it all caps. Let's make it bold. Bold because we're going to be reversing out of a color, and that's going to slightly diminish its readability. So we want to compensate for that by making the text a bit heavier in weight. And then I'm going to add a small amount of left indent. And you'll see why in just a moment, but 3 points. Now I can apply the rule. I might want to do something else first. You may recall that the type here is white, so I need to apply paper or white to the text. That's going to make it disappear for a moment, but we can address, or we'll be writing that in just a moment. So I can come to my control panel menu and down to paragraph rules, or I can come to my paragraph styles and choose new paragraph style, give it a name, and then come to paragraph rules. We have two types of rule, above or below. This is going to be above, and it starts out being the text color. So it's currently white. You can probably just about see it. Well, I want it to be in orange, and I want its weight to be 20 points. And I'm picking 20 points because that's the size of my type. And the reason I chose to indent the text by 3 points is otherwise the W of Wednesday would be butted up a little bit too close to the left-hand edge. Then I'm going to come to my offset amount, and this will adjust the position of the rule relative to the type. Just going to nudge that down a fraction. I can make the width of the rule the column, which is actually what I'm going to use, or I could just go for the text, the width of the text, but I'm going to use column in this case. And then I'll click OK. So having done that once, for the other rules, all I need to do is click in the paragraph and then apply that style to them. Then I realize, well, I actually want a little bit of space between them. No problem. I come back to the paragraph style. We edit that, come to indents and spacing. And in this case, I'm going to have 10 points of space before. So let's just take a look at some other things that we can do with a paragraph rule. And these work best with single line paragraphs. If you have a multi-line paragraph and you want this kind of effect, you need something else, and that's coming up in the next movie. Then you need paragraph shading or paragraph borders. But for a single line, this works great. So we've seen a column width versus a text width, but we can also, as well as having a rule above, we can have a rule below at the same time. And there's a style that I created for this. I can edit the style, or if we want to just edit it locally, i.e. applying only to this instance, I can come to my control panel menu, paragraph rules. So you see we have the rule above at 20 points, and that's much as it was before, but we also have a rule below. Now, even though it's called a rule below, I've moved its position up with the offset amount, and that is set to the width of the column. And if I move it up more, you can see how that relates to the rule above. And there are all sorts of different effects that you can get with this approach. You can even create a lozenge rule. I'm not sure I'd recommend doing this. It seems very fussy for something that ultimately doesn't look that great, but some people like to do this. So let's just see how this is achieved. We have a rule above. In this case, it's 16 points. Offset is adjusted. It is the width of the text. Now, in addition, there is a rule below. The rule below uses a different style of line. So it's using a dotted line. It is at the same weight. And then it's a question, and this involves quite a lot of trial and error. Then it's a question of matching the offsets so that it appears that the rounded ends are perfectly aligned with the rule above. Also, to push out these rounded ends, there is a negative left indent and a negative right indent. So some trial and error to get that one right, but when you get it right, you can save it as a paragraph style and then apply it as often as you want. You can also create this kind of effect with a rule above and a rule below, where you have some sort of form that you want people to fill in. Now, this doesn't make an official form field, it's just a visual form field. So let's see how we can do this. I will come to paragraph rules, and what we have is a rule above set to grey at the width of the column. The offset is adjusted. If I turn off the rule, you can see, well, it goes away. But if we now come to the rule below, the rule below is set to the width of the text rather than the width of the column, and its color is the same color as the background. So if I were to turn off the rule below, then the gray box would fill the full width of the column. So it's a trick, essentially, and quite a useful one if you want to achieve this kind of thing. Paragraph rules also come in handy when you want to have a heading inside a frame and a color bar at the top of the frame. Now, if I come to my text frame options, text frame options is where we can set up the inset spacing for a box. And if I were to set the inset spacing for the top back to 6, or if I click on this to make all settings the same and turn on the preview, you can see that's the result that we will get. So it's essential in this case that the inset, the top inset, I'll need to break that chain, the top inset is set to 0. And the other thing about this is that it uses an option which we haven't seen elsewhere, and that is keep in frame. I'll come to paragraph rules. And this is the option that I'm referring to, and it's dimmed there. That's because I'm looking at rule below, but I actually want to be looking at rule above. So keep in frame, if I were to turn that off, then the rule will actually stick up out of the top of the text frame, which is not what I want. I need to keep that in frame, and that will push the text below down into the frame. So those are some things to consider when using paragraph rules.